Welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about my cow theory, but before we get there, I want to do a little housekeeping. Remember, please go to chatwithdrkat.com. Put in your suggestions, your feedback, thoughts, feelings. You can do it on the podcast, wherever you see it. You can put in some feedback and I'll be sure to respond to you. But I'm really enjoying what's coming in and the different topics and the different thoughts of what people want to see. So keep bringing those in. Remember, no fluff, no judgment, just real talk that leads to real change. Now, I've talked about the cow theory before. I love this theory because I just think it is so simple. Many times couples don't think about what has led them to that place. Sometimes they're not thinking about the simple little change could have stopped that resentment before it began to form. Sometimes you can walk away from today's podcast and begin that change today. You can do that today. So let's think about this cow theory. I've said it in another podcast, but it really deserves to be spoken about again. So I'm visiting relatives in Ireland. True story. In Ireland, I'm outside walking with one of my cousins. They have a dairy farm. And I was talking to him just about his life. And then he said, would you mind coming with me to lead the cows from one field to the other? So I said, sure. So we're walking and I want you to just picture this beautiful, picturesque Ireland scene. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If not, definitely recommend. That's one thing to put on your bucket list. Definitely a place to go. Green like nobody's business with these black and white cows with all that green. We're walking. I reach out and I touch the back of a cow just to give it a little pet. This cow turned around and looked at me like she was going to charge me and do damage. I looked at my cousin and I said, what's going on with this cow? What is happening? And she's staring at me. She will not turn away. So what he said to me was, well, they're dairy cows and they had been used to being touched every day. You know, the machines going on their udders and the farmers would pat their back as they were putting on the machines. They were used to being touched a lot. And they got to the point where they were no longer able to be dairy cows. They got older and basically they're put out to pasture. They treat them very humanely. Obviously, they feed them and they move them every day from one field to the next, but they're not being touched. And now what he said to me was, so when somebody does touch them, he goes, I think they're a bit angry. And I thought, the cow theory. This is perfect when it comes to relationships. So basically, how does that apply to relationships? Well, you're in a relationship, maybe a long-term relationship. It could be a marriage, any of that. And in the beginning, you're just in love and you want to be together. Maybe there's more touching. Usually there's a lot more touching, right? There's a lot more things going on, a lot more communication. Then you decide to have kids or there's career or whatever happens. And basically, you put each other out to pasture. And now, the one thing that you do want is to be held, is to be touched, is to be communicated with, but it's not happening. You can be in love with somebody and feel very alone. And oftentimes that's what happens in relationships when we put each other out to pasture. That's when resentment sets in. Now, can we look back to the day it happens? You know, it's an interesting thing, and I'll talk about it in another podcast, but, when was the last time I saw this on TikTok where somebody said, when was the last time you held your child, carrying them around? Because eventually you stop carrying them, they get heavy. And it was this great TikTok because it was a conversation about looking back to seeing when was that last time, because people don't think that is the last time that they're going to hold their child. Well, when it comes to relationship, They don't think this will be the last time that I reach out to hug my significant other or touch them or tell them that they're important or show them value. Something happens. It could have been an argument. It could have been a move. It could have been a change in the relationship. Maybe somebody cheated. We don't know. There could be so many different things. Or it could be as simple as life took over and everything else became more important than the relationship that you're in. You know, it's an interesting thing. A lot of times people will say to me, well, I don't need somebody else to make me happy. You absolutely don't. You create your own happiness. That's vital. Create your own happiness. But if you're in a marriage or a relationship with somebody, why not reap the benefits of being together and making each other happy? If it takes 30 seconds, 1 minute during the day to make that person feel valued, seen, they're not going to feel lonely anymore. Resentment will start going away. So again, cow theory. It also applies to teenagers. You know, when you have kids and you're used to them cuddling up to you, oh my goodness, before you couldn't even go to the bathroom by yourself. They're knocking at the door, wanting to walk in, no privacy. And then it gets to the point where they don't even really want to spend time with you. As parents, we get put out to pasture by our teenagers. Such a hard thing. Such a hard thing. You're put out to pasture by your kids. All you want to do is spend time with them. And the resentment starts to set in. And sometimes we become a little bit more abrupt. We're setting more boundaries with them, saying, hey, don't talk to me like that more. And a lot of it is because we're in pasture. And then when they come to want you to console them or they want you to take care of them, at first, you're kind of caught off guard. What I recommend is embrace as much as you can. Put that resentment down with the kids and just embrace that moment, even if it's for a moment. Take it in. Because there'll be other times in your life with your child that you'll have these moments. Remember, when you're with your child, you only have a certain amount of time when they're little. It's very short. And then after that, once they start going to college and finding their new way and everything else, it's learning how to have a relationship with them as an adult. We're going to have another podcast just on that. But I wanted to touch on that because oftentimes we don't think how we're put out to pasture, where that cow theory comes into play. You know, I do find it interesting in my practice when I see it, and I see that impact of someone sitting in front of me. And I look at them and I see their response. I see the psychological pattern beginning to form in their head of when it happened. They're reaching back and they're connecting their thoughts with their feelings. That's vital in helping yourself. Identifying your thoughts, identifying your feelings, and how they connect. So what do I mean by that? You can say, I feel lonely. I really feel lonely. I'm sad. I'm left alone a lot. I want to be held. I want someone to make me feel important. Not that I can't make myself feel important, but sometimes the validation of somebody else coming in is important. We're social creatures as human beings. We need those things. So when these things start to happen, we have feelings, we have emotions. The thought becomes, well, he or she doesn't pay attention to me anymore. Now I'm angry. I'm resentful. I'm put out to pasture. Okay, let's bring those two together. I feel lonely because I'm not getting this from you. Is it possible to receive that from you? That's part of the therapeutic experience, is really learning how to communicate those things. Because oftentimes when we're in a relationship and we start to have a conversation, it always seems like somebody has to walk out the winner. Somebody has to win the conversation, rather than realize the two of you can come out either losers or you can come out winners. Winners are when people are actively heard, things are put together, and you can walk away, maybe with a plan to start something today. So, in hindsight, when I look at that cow theory, I really wish that couples could have that hindsight, that foresight to look and say, wow, I just put this person out to pasture, or I just feel like I was put out to pasture, and let's stop it before the resentment sets in. Remember, that cow looked at me. Oh my goodness. I wish I could show you what that cow looked like. I mean, that cow looked at me again like she was going to charge me, and she did not take her eyes off of me. Now, so she's turned like this, right? She was looking at me, and she didn't look away for a while. That was a lot of anger there, a lot of resentment from one touch. So let's go back to that part. Say you are getting ready for work, you're taking the kids out, maybe, you're going out to dinner and you're walking in and your partner gently puts their hand on your back or something, and you wince like, ugh, don't touch me. Or they finally reach out to you and touch your hand and you kind of pull away. Here's the interesting thing about resentment. The one thing that you actually want is to be touched and to feel important and to feel seen and to feel loved. But the anger and the resentment is so deep rooted that when you receive it, your first reaction is to pull away. Now, that action of pulling away tells that other person they clearly don't like it. I need to stop. They feel rejected. And it's a hard thing because the person that is now getting the touch that pulls away wants to prove a point, wants that other person to know, I don't want you touching me. I'm angry with you. Wouldn't it be great if you could sit down and say, hey, you reached out to touch my hand and I pulled away. I'm sorry about doing that, but let me tell you why that happened. And explain. I feel resentment. I feel anger. I feel like I've been wanting you to touch me and see me and spend time with me. And then when you finally do something, as if that's supposed to make it all better, I become more angry. Yet it's the one thing I want. So what can we do? Now, there was another podcast that I did about quick little steps you could take to re-engage with your partner. Some of those things are great, but sometimes the little thing you could do today, after you watch this podcast today, this one thing you could do, write a little note for your partner that just says, I'm thinking about you, would love to reconnect. Hey, I didn't tell you this morning, but you looked beautiful this morning. You looked handsome. I love how you are as a mother. I love how you are as a father. Wow, I was really impressed what you did at work. There's so many things that you can say. So many different things that you could say in one little note. Maybe a text. Try it. Sometimes letting the person know that you've finally connected your feelings with your thoughts. And now you want to talk about it because you want to regain the relationship. Try again. Because oftentimes what couples don't realize is that they don't take care of it. Eventually someone's going to wake up and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Life is short. That's why oftentimes we see a lot of divorce rate even in the 25th year of marriage. And a lot of times it's because they literally wake up and say, oh, wow, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I think before people are, I don't know how I can do this financially. This is going to be too expensive. Oh, I've got the kids. All the work's going to be on me. What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. Trapped feelings. Kids move out of the house. Most of the time you're more financially independent. Maybe you have a friend that you can go and stay with. You feel empowered and you say, I don't want this anymore. And that's why we see a lot of divorces later in life. So I challenge you really to look at this cow theory. Because I think in every relationship, you're not only the cow, you're the farmer. And we have to find a way back. Now, I say have to. That's if you want to save the relationship. If you don't, that's a whole other podcast, and we'll talk about that too. So, in looking back at today, what I'd like you to take with you today is that you have the power to change. You have the power to make a difference in yourself and in your relationship. You just have to choose when that's going to be. If you want to continue to feel resentment and anger, choose it. Own it. Be angry. Be resentful. Be lonely. That's okay if that's what you choose. I don't think you'll be happy, but you can choose it, and you can be right all the time. But if you want change, you want a better life, then sometimes you have to put aside the resentment, the anger, the ego, the big ego, and choose change in your relationship. Allow yourself to become vulnerable even within the resentment. Talk about what you need. Talk about your feelings. Talk about your thoughts around them and how they connect. So, I'm Dr. Kat. And I want you to keep thinking about this podcast, the cow theory, how you can make changes in your life in so many different areas. Sometimes it's going to be my voice. Sometimes it's going to be the voice of somebody else. Maybe it's going to be a book you've read. Maybe it's you coming back to the podcast and listening to the next episode. Sometimes it's hearing the voice. I know with, people in my practice that come, sometimes in between sessions, they'll text me or they'll just say, hey, can you get on the call for a couple of seconds? And sometimes it really is just a couple of seconds, 2 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer. And it's just hearing the voice that brings you back to that time, brings you back to what you've learned. So if you need to listen to this podcast again, please listen. The cow theory is so important. Now, I know it seems very simple, and sometimes when you're feeling anger and resentment and frustration, sometimes the simplest things almost seem like an insult because it couldn't possibly cover all those feelings we have. But sometimes the simplest path is the answer. It's the answer. So this has been Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. Please go to the website, chatwithdrkat.com, and put in your suggestions, your thoughts, your feedback. I love to hear from you, and I love to draw from the things that you suggest. So, I'll see you next time.